Welcome to WeLearn Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 22nd of the subject The Study of Society, and the chapter is Culture, Diversity and Change. The topics to be covered are culture and environment, culture and society, culture and language, structure of culture, cultural diversity, cultural conditioning and cultural change. Culture and environment. Both human beings and animals have to adapt themselves to the natural environment. The adaptation of animals is governed by instinctual mechanisms. Human beings, on the other hand, adapt themselves to the environment in a variety of ingenious ways. The great apes, who are zoologically the nearest to human beings, can survive in tropical conditions and on specialized diets only in very limited numbers. So human beings and animals, they adapt themselves differently to the natural environment. Human beings can adapt themselves in a variety of different ways, ingenious ways, whereas animals have to adapt themselves to the natural environment in basically instinctual mechanisms, in instinctual ways. Culture and environment. Human beings, on the other hand, adapts themselves in a variety of ways, and also they are capable of living and multiplying on various sorts of diets in all kinds of environmental conditions. Water is of paramount importance to the Bushmen, since the Kalahari Desert is one of the most inhospitable desert regions in the world. The failure of monsoon in certain regions for 2 or more successive years sometimes forces the farmers to abandon their villages. They come to be heavily dependent on their flocks of sheep, goats and other animals, and quite often move with their herds in search of water and grazing land. So they shift from there to different areas in search of water and the land. Culture and society. Society is perceived as a chain of social relations among groups of individuals who are held together by commonly shared institutions and processes. All processes of human life cycle are carried out and regulated in society. So basically, society is perceived as a chain of social relations within a group of individuals. They have social relations. They are also held together by commonly shared institutions and also processes. So they have shared institutions, they have shared language, they have shared structure, they have also shared lifestyle, attitudes, behavior, thinking, and all these processes. And basically, society consists of the group of individuals. Human being is generally defined as a social animal because human beings cannot live aloof. They have to be with people, they have to interact with people. Culture exists only in human societies. Culture and language. Language plays a crucial role in the process of inculturation, whereby the individual acquires and imbibes the values, beliefs, customs, and habits of his society. So language plays a very important role in the process of evolution, in the process of inculturation, and human beings acquires and imbibes the values, language, customs with observing and also learning. Language facilitates the sharing and accumulation of experiences and skills. It is also instrumental in the transmission of cultural traditions from one generation to another. Language has played a pivotal role in the evolutionary survival of humans, of Homo sapiens, and the continuity of human society. So with the help of language only, evolutionary survival of different species take place, and also the continuity of human society takes place, and also it also helps in the transmission of cultural traditions and cultural norms from one generation to another, and it also helps in sharing and also sharing experiences and skills with each other. Language is learned and acquired by the human child in a social and interpersonal context. A family is the first window through which the human child acquires and learns different languages and different nuances of language. A human being's mind is especially programmed for learning language, and a child of average ability can master any complex language of the world, be it Chinese, Sanskrit, or Arabic. Language reflects the cultural patterns and traditions of people. So what are the traditions and what are the cultural patterns, behavioral patterns? Language reflects that. Language not only reflects the cultural traditions of a people, but it also influences their perception and thinking. Linguistic patterns, in other words, condition, perception, and thought. The Zuni language has a common term for orange and yellow. Correspondingly, the Zunis make no distinction between these two shades. The Hopi language has two grammatical categories which do not exist in English and many other languages. The first category has names only for temporary events such as thunder, lightning. The second category has names only for long-term events such as stars, man. The distinction in the Hopi language between these two categories is indicative of the manner in which the Hopi people organize their experiences. Structure of culture. Culture is constituted by interrelated parts of elements. The internal organization of culture comprises its structure. The term culture is essentially an abstraction which is derived from an observation of human behavior. Human behavior is organized and ordered in terms of traits and patterns. So human behavior is organized, it is ordered. Cultural patterns. A cultural pattern refers to an ordered sequence of behavior. It represents a form of behavior which is shared among the members of a given community or group. Cultural patterns are of two types: ideal cultural patterns and actual behavioral patterns. Ideal cultural patterns define how the people of a society should behave in particular situations. And actual behavioral patterns are the behavioral patterns which are real, which can be seen by other people. Ideal cultural patterns are which cultural patterns which people or which society should have or should behave in particular situations. A cultural pattern generally combines two or more elements in a given culture. The pattern of plug agriculture, which first originated in Western Asia, comprises the following elements: the plug, animals to draw the plug, domestication of these animals, grains of rice or wheat to be sown, and fertilization with dung. Cultural traits and cultural complex. A cultural trait is the smallest identifiable unit of a culture, such as bow and arrow. The system of primogeniture, which is prevalent in most parts of India and other countries, and according to which the eldest son succeeds his father after his death, is an example of a cultural trait. A cultural complex, on the other hand, is an aggregate of traits. The cultural complex basically is the totality, is the sum of various traits and qualities of human beings. Cultural symbols. Every culture bestows a special meaning and significance on certain objects and things. Material objects, colors, figures, and gestures thus assume special importance for the members of a given culture. They represent cultural symbols. So every culture has certain meaning and significance in its own term. Material objects, different colors, figures, gestures, they have certain importance for the members of a given culture. So the way they sit, the way they behave, the colors, the significance of the colors all have their own significance in different cultures. Cultural ethos. A culture has two distinctive but interrelated aspects. One can be described as eidos, or the external form of a culture, and the other as ethos, or the worldview of a people, their conception of the world and of man's relationship with the world. The eidos includes the formal structure of a culture, such as its institutions, customs, habits, rituals, and behavioral patterns. The ethos of a culture refers to its total quality, the system of ideas and values which permeates and dominates the whole culture. So basically the ethos of a culture refers to the total quality, refers to the entire quality, the system of ideas, values also which permeates, which goes and dominates the entire culture, which is permeating in the entire culture. Cultural areas. The area in which similar cultural traits are found is called a cultural area. The great regions of the Pacific, such as Australia, Polynesia, Micronesia, Melanesia, and Indonesia, are described as cultural areas because each one of them is marked by a concentration of distinctive cultural traits and features. The present boundaries of states in India, which have been drawn on the basis of languages, generally represent cultural areas. Major components of culture: technology, economic organization, social organization, political organization, ideology, arts, and language. So these are the components of culture. Cultural diversity. Mankind is characterized by tremendous diversities not only in regard to observable features but also in respect of languages, religious beliefs and practices, customs and traditions, and rituals and ceremonies. So basically, there are different activities and observable features are there. Practices, religious beliefs are there, customs and rituals and ceremonies are also there. There are great variations among different human groups in regard to the disposal of the dead. The Jews, Muslims, Christians, and several other communities bury their dead. The Hindus cremate the dead. Cultural diversity in India. Cultural variations exist in all groups of people worldwide. The Brahmin constitute a single Varna. The Brahmin subcastes are divided into two major sects, the Vishnava and the Shaivite. There are differences in the various regions of India in respect of dress patterns as well, in terms of costumes, in terms of dressing also. There are differences with respect to cultural differences as well. In eastern India, the ritual wearing of unseen garments is widely prevalent. Cultural diversity and unity of mankind. Cultural variations among the various people of the world may appear to be confusing and mind-boggling. All human beings, regardless of social and cultural differences, belong to a single biological species, Homo sapiens. All human groups and populations can interbreed and produce their own kind. So basically, cultural variations are which are there in the entire world of various people can be really confusing and can be really puzzling for the people to understand. All human beings, regardless of various differences, belong to a single biological species, that is Homo sapiens. Cultural conditioning. Human beings as individuals and as members of a group think, feel, and behave in certain ways because they have been brought up under certain conditions in a given society or community. A culture influences and conditions people to attach a special meaning to certain objects, things, and colors. So basically, with the help of culture and also with the help of various codes which are given, human beings as individuals think, they feel and behave in certain ways because they have been brought up under certain conditions and they have been taught certain things. And a culture also influences and conditions people to attach special meanings. From the very beginning, people have been conditioned to behave in a certain way, to sit or talk or to stand in a certain way in various societies. So it basically conditions their mind to act similarly. Purity and pollution in India. An interesting illustration of the manner in which culture influences and conditions behavior is provided by an aspect of the caste system which is known as ritual purity and pollution. Pollution is supposed to be brought about by birth, unclean occupation, and contact with death and bodily emissions such as blood, excreta, and nail parings in hair. Pollution is believed to be transferable by physical contact. Cultural relativism. Ethnocentrism is the view that one's way of life, religion, and ideals are to be preferred to others. Cultural relativism refers to the view that the values, ideals, and behavioral patterns of people are not to be evaluated and judged in terms of our own values and ideas, but must be understood and appreciated in their own cultural context. It should not be judged, but appreciated in their own context. Cultural change. Human society is characterized on one hand by persistence and continuity of cultural forms and on the other by change and innovation. No society can be totally static or isolated for long periods of time. Changes in a given culture may come about from its internal dynamics such as revolutions or upheavals or from contact with other cultures, and also by persistence, continuity of cultural forms, and change and innovation. Acculturation and diffusion. When groups of individuals having different cultural traditions come into contact, changes take place in their original cultural patterns. This is referred to as acculturation or cultural contact. Diffusion, on the other hand, refers to the spread of cultural traits and patterns from major centers of civilization to smaller cultures and occasionally the other way round. So diffusion is basically spread of cultural traits, qualities, patterns from major centers of civilization to smaller cultures and to smaller centers. And basically, acculturation, when different groups of human beings come into contact, different changes take place in their original cultural patterns, and they also start behaving in the similar way, and also different changes take place. So that is known as acculturation. Diffusion generally refers to the spread of specific cultural traits or elements, whereas acculturation refers to the changes brought about in whole cultures. The process of acculturation and diffusion have been going on in human society since very ancient times. So diffusion refers to spread of specific cultural traits or elements within other groups of people. Diffusion of paper making. Paper was invented in China during the beginning of the 1st century AD. In AD 751, the Chinese attacked Samarkand, which was under the control of Muslims. The Arabs repulsed the attack and a number of Chinese were held by them as prisoners of war. The Arabs were aware of the fact that Chinese knew the technique of paper making. Story of the alphabet. Writing originated in ancient Mesopotamia during the 3rd millennium BC. Systems of writing are divided into the main categories non-alphabetical and alphabetical. The Mesopotamian system of writing, known as cuneiform or wedge-shaped, was non-alphabetical. The first alphabetical system of writing emerged during the 18th century BC in Syria and Palestine. It's known as North Semitic script. Diffusion and language, a comparative study of languages, provides an interesting illustration of the dimensions of cultural diffusion. The English language has borrowed and adopted hundreds of words from Chinese, Indian, Semitic, African, and other languages of the world in the course of its development. So English language has also borrowed and adopted hundreds of words and phrases from different languages all over the world: Chinese, Indian, Semitic, African, and other languages. So that was all about culture, cultural conditioning, and also the importance of language. These are some of the questions. You have to do it yourself. Bring out the relationship between culture and environment. Show how the concepts of cultural diversity and cultural conditioning broaden our understanding of human behavior. Thank you. Happy learning. Be learning.